Federal government to spend $1.2 million for evacuation and protection of Nigerians from Sudan. Good morning. Welcome to the Dailies on Echo Television International, where we keep you up to date what's happening from the Nigerian newspaper. I am Sela Elisha Dashom, and of course, Rachel Tanzi is here with me. Good morning.
Morning,
How you doing?
I'm fine. How about you?
I'm great, thank you. We are live on Facebook and on YouTube. Do well, drop your comment and your contribution and stories that are of interest to you this morning. And let us go through the papers, starting with the National Star newspaper.
On National Star newspaper, objection to Labour Party suits proves INEC compromised elections, Obi tells court. This is still on the tribunal. You can find the details on page 17. Tinubu Shetima arrived Defense House. This is on the inauguration, and you can find the details on page 18. Insecurity forces appeal court to relocate Ebonyi Election Tribunal to Abuja. PSC dismisses 3 ASPs, demotes ACP and others. The big story on New National Star: international travelers lament as federal government secretly hikes forex rate on flight tickets. The rider following that, cost of tickets jumped to 610 naira per dollar above IATA approved rate. Federal government sacrificing Nigerians to please foreign airlines. This is coming from an aviation expert. The details can be found on the front page and inside the paper on page 2. And on Lassa fever, 152 dead, 877 cases recorded in 15 weeks. Fuel subsidy removal, be ready to pay 100,000 naira minimum wage, NLC tells federal government. The details can be found on page 8. Scarcity of new naira notes hits FCT, residents cry out. Military officer feared dead as armed men kill 15 in Benue community. Federal government spent $1.2 million to evacuate stranded Nigerians from Sudan to Egypt. The details can be found on page 10. We have a picture story from left to right. Executive Director, Commercial Services, Nigerian Electricity Management Service Agency, Ms. Chinwe Onovo, MD, CEO, and Chief Electrical Inspector of the Federation, Alhaji Aliyu Tukur Tahir, and General Manager Public Affairs NEMSA Mr. Uche Aneka at a media briefing in Abuja yesterday. And that's all the news on the New National Star.
On the Punch newspaper, the big story: Sudan conflict, students lament slow evacuation, federal government to pay $1.2 million. With the rider, only 15 out of 40 buses ready on Wednesday conveyed 750 students. Ministers say costs cover 19-hour journey, security from Sudan to Cairo. And I'd like to read a little detail of that story because it's important that we know what's happening over there. One of the the evacuation of the 2,400 students and other Nigerians trapped by the ongoing conflict in Sudan took off on a slow start on Wednesday, as only 15 out of the 40 buses required for the exercise were provided. Although the federal government hired 40 buses for the repatriation of the citizens from other cities to Egypt, only 10 buses were available as of Wednesday morning, while additional 5 buses were provided later in the day. This was happening as the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Oyema, claimed the federal government had been charged $1.2 million for the evacuation of Nigerian nationals out of Sudan. He cited insecurity in Sudan for the high cost of evacuating Nigerians from Sudan. One of the evacuated students who spoke to the Punch said evacuating Nigerians are with the rapid support forces. They will escort them to the border of Egypt. The government has said on Tuesday that the evacuation of about 5,500 Nigerians, including students stranded in Sudan, will commence on Wednesday. To expedite the repatriation, the government, through the National Emergency Management Agency, Tuesday released 150 million naira for hiring the buses that will convey the citizens from Sudan to Cairo in Egypt. And you can continue to read more detail of that story. Of course, Nigerians will be worried why we have to spend such a huge amount of money, because if you have to round this up to we have to change it. We're talking about over 900 million naira just for this evacuation. It's quite a huge amount of money, especially in a time when we are still struggling, we're on the red alert, we're working on deficit. We've even seen there's no money in Nigeria as it is presently, so you begin to ask questions. We have to go out of our own means, but it's important no matter the amount of money, as far as the students will be back and reunite with their families safe without anyone being injured. So we hope that all that is needed, even though we're seeing that it is very slow, but it's important that we keep the spirit moving, and we hope that the government will not, give up on the students, but then try their best to make sure that the students get back home safe.
So sad.
Still on the Punch newspaper, Obi attack INEC for defending Tinubu Atiku claims victory. You can find more detail of that story on page 8. And on cash scarcity crippled Nigeria's economy, coming from the UN. Tinubu's speaker aspirant meet on zoning behind closed doors. You can find more detail of that inside the paper. We have 4,000 trucks to visit Lekki Port daily coming from the TTP. And we have the Lagos government demolishes illegal building on Banana Island. It's important. At the time where we saw there are lots of collapse. So I think it's important that the government swift into action. Another story we have, say, police arrest Lagos spare part dealer for assaulting housewife. You can find that story on page 4. And of course, we can see the picture story showing some Nigerians at the point in Sudan before they actually evacuated in Cairo, Egypt yesterday, and that's all on the Punch newspaper.
On the Matrix newspaper, fuel subsidy, be ready to pay 100,000 naira minimum wage, NLC tells federal government. Nigerian Air to begin operation before May 29, Sirika is still assuring us. Food price inflation remains high globally, coming from the World Bank. City dent Arsenal titles hope in dominant victory. Chelsea crumble again. This is on the Premier League, and you can find the details on page 17. No Nigerian has died in Sudan conflict, says federal government. Some evacuations already done via sea. This is coming from the federal government, and you can find the details inside the paper on page 4. The big story on the Matrix newspaper, election petition, Labour Party, Peter Obi bomb INEC. INEC adorned cap of contestant in election to conducted as umpire. This is coming from Labour Party, Peter Obi. Avoid creating impression that you have no respect for neutrality, INEC is warning. Banks, telcos meet as debt hits 100 billion naira. Ahead of inauguration, Tinubu Shettima moved to defense. Guinean Ambassador Yara opens up on Tinubu's special envoy status. The details can be found on page 9. At the downside of the paper, Buhari presides over FEC meeting, swears in 6 new permanent secretaries. The details can be found on page 9. We have a picture story where we can see Dangote visits Tinubu. President of Dangote Group, Aliko Dangote, President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu during Dangote visit to him at the Defense House yesterday. And that's all the news on the Matrix newspaper.
On the Vanguard newspaper, custom agent kick as Lagos government slam new charge on imported vehicles, with detail found on page 19. And on the presidential poll, you are biased, Peter Obi replies INEC insists on review of result uploaded from the beavers. And we have commanding officer, soldier, 15 others killed as headers storm Benue community again. And you wonder what they are looking for in Kaduna, Benue, Plateau State, and all other places. It seems to be a soft spot for them these days. So I hope that the government of Benue don't sit down and fold their arms. They need to swift into action. Yesterday we saw the amount of people, or the number of people, that are actually at the IDP camps right now. So it will tell you that a lot needs to be done. Still on the Vanguard newspaper, we have kidnappers of 29 people in Abuja yet to make contact with relatives, says the villager. You can find more of that story on page 6. We still have the stranded Nigerians in Sudan. You can see the picture of them trying to make phone calls to their loved ones. The big story on Vanguard is on the poll. I have no age drug record controversy. Atiku replies Tinubu, with the writer saying insists APC candidate didn't meet constitutional threshold and is constitutionally disabled from contesting for office of President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Maintained President-elect had demonstrated inconsistency as to his actual date of birth, secondary school he attended, state of origin, gender, actual name, certificate, evidence, university attended. You can find all of that story on page 35. No Nigerian died in Sudan, federal government is saying, as airlift begins tomorrow, which is today because it started yesterday. And then we're having on Banana Island, Joint Task Force demolishes illegal buildings. You can find that story on page 10. And on asset forfeiture, court strike out EFCC suit against Governor Yahaya Bello, that's governor of Kogi State. And on the 10th Assembly, we have Tinubu needs Igbo to succeed, say the Southwest senators elect. You can find detail of that. And we have a picture story there where we can see the president and the group chief executive officer of the UBA Bank and also with other stakeholders. So you can do well to get the Vanguard newspaper and read more details of stories that are of interest to you.
On Nigerian Tribune, presidential election, Atiku hits back at Tinubu, says he is drug-free, unencumbered by identity scandals, and Obi's fault INEC for seeking dismissal of petition against Tinubu. Alleged disengagement of Obi's petition a blackmail. This is coming from the Apapa Labour Party faction. You can find the details on page 16. Still on Adamawa poll, Binani withdraws suit against INEC, Fin3 and others. National Assembly presiding officers Tinubu, Lawan, APC, NWC meet at Defense House. Senate President drops ambition as stakeholders maul South for position, confusion over Speaker's slot. You can find more details of the story on page 16. The big story is on Sudan crisis. Federal government hires 40 buses at $1.2 million, evacuates 2,400 students. The writer says still set to take 11-hour journey to Cairo, air peace to airlift evacuees. No Nigerian died in conflict. This is coming from the minister. You can find the details on page 2. And at Banana Island, Lagos begins demolition of illegal structures. Asset for future, court strikes out EFCC suit against Yahaya Bello. The details can be found on page 30. Removal of fuel subsidy, recipe for social economic crisis. This is coming from the NLC. At the downside of the paper, suspected herdsmen kill soldier, 14 others in Benue, another 6 killed in Plateau, gunmen abduct 29 in Abuja village, troops kill 5 bandits, recover grenade launcher, magazine, cattle in Zamfara. Over 9,000 illegal headers chased out of Ondo. This is coming from the Amateku commander. You can find the details of all of these stories on page 28 and 29. We have a picture story of the demolition of illegal structures at Banana Island, and that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
On the Blueprint newspaper, suspended headers killed 2 soldiers and 15 others in Benue. Gunmen slay 6 miners in Plateau State. You can find detail of that story inside the paper. And we have the big story, ex-lawmakers caution as Tinubu waits into National Assembly leadership tussle. With the writer contestant intensify lobby, let's guard against executive interference coming from Gulu. I don't have dual citizenship, Atiku tells Tinubu. I bestowed Guinea citizenship on president-elect as democracy icon coming from gone there. You can find detail of that on page 6. Still on Blueprint newspaper, SEC urges investors to expose illegal fund managers. And on Adamawa gubernatorial election, Binani withdraws court vow suit against INEC. And we have other story here. Blackout looms as federal government plan to cut discos from national grid. You can find that story on page 22. And on Sudan, Nigeria to spend $1.2 million on citizens' evacuation coming from the federal government. And on WMD, vaccine for malaria treatment now accessible, but I think we saw it on the paper that it will be accessible in 2024.
Yes.
Well, we'll just keep our fingers crossed, and maybe possibly that is when it will now be in circulation.
True.
Still on the Blueprint newspaper, we have court strike out property forfeiture suit against Bedlow. EFCC appeals. You can find more detail of that story inside the paper. And we have NAHCON declares Friday as deadline for Hajj Fair, begins screening for medical team. You can find detail of that on page 7. We still have a picture story. You can do well to get the blueprint and read detail of any story that is of interest to you.
On the Guardian newspaper, subsidy removal, marketers in limbo over implementation, $15.1 billion foreign exchange demand for fuel importation, and you can find the details on page 6. And Tele, I think we should talk about the subsidy removal because we can see what the NLC are saying, that Nigeria, the federal government, should be ready to make 100,000 naira as the minimum wage if they really plan on sticking to the fuel subsidy removal. As we have seen that it has been estimated, or let's say there is a prediction that from experts, and that when this subsidy is being removed, we should be prepared to buy a liter of petrol at 750 naira, and that's just an estimate, and others have said it could be above that, it could be up to 1,000, and it could be less. However, the more safe price, which is most likely, is 750, and that's what Nigerians should prepare their mind. And now we are seeing the NLC saying they should, if they want that, then minimum wage should be 100,000 naira, and this is the same minimum wage as it is now of 30,000 naira, and we have a lot of states that haven't implemented that. Now, don't forget that when this price of petrol goes to such a high amount, it's not just in some state, as it is even in the states where people don't get paid minimum wage of 30,000 naira, still have to deal with buying the fuel at the high price it is at the moment. Now imagine if it goes to that kind of high price, and we still have states that have not been able to meet up with 30,000 naira minimum wage. What are we going to do? Because it looks like it's truly going to be a difficult, because yes, it makes a lot of sense if the NLC is seeing it like that, because that is the only way. If your income will be that much, that is the only way life might be easier for Nigerians when it comes to transport fare, businesses running, and all of that, for us to be able to afford basic needs. But then we are at a situation where some states are not even earning between 30,000. We have a lot of people working and their income is not up to 30,000, as it is a minimum wage. And now we are seeing the NLC saying 100,000 should be it. But then for how long are we going to keep seeing increment on salary as the way forward, rather than tackling what is the problem? I know it is their responsibility to come up with a way forward to ease the hardship on Nigerians, when as we anticipate what is about to happen concerning the fuel subsidy. However, is it possible? Do we see there's something possible for the government to make 100,000 to be the minimum wage?
You know, Rachel, I think what we lack, or let me say what the government lack, or where governance is lacking, is where we do not have transparency. Because if the government is transparent as much as possible, we'll be able to have, okay, what exactly are we expecting? We know that, of course, there are states, just like you said, that cannot afford to pay this 30,000 minimum wage, which, of course, will be on the papers. news that the federal government is even increasing the allowances of federal government workers, especially for civil servants. That is why looking at, depending on your grade level, how much will be increased to your allowance.
True.
Now we're going to look at all this. The question a common Nigerian will ask, if you're increasing the salary of federal government workers, how about the local government workers? How about the state government workers? You should know that most of the responsibilities or most of this load is more on the local government and on the state level.
True.
And reason why I said that, because you need to go down to a grassroots level and even the state level, you know that a lot of work needs to be done. Sure. Now, of course, there are states that would love to pay this 30,000 naira and above, but they do not have enough revenue. They do not generate enough revenue.
Even their allocations.
Of course, allocation that even comes into the state is little, because some of the allocation, especially, we are not going to rule out the fact that the oil producing states collect the highest allocation. We saw in the paper recently, Delta, Bayelsa, yet we're seeing that these are states that are lavishing in poverty.
True.
If you're going to talk about poverty, most of the people who are really, you know, looking at people who are living in the poverty rate are down at the local government areas. And now you begin to ask questions, this allocation, does it get to them as it's supposed to? We've been fighting here. I think it has gotten to a point that it seems as if we have even been campaigning, even though we're not doing that, but because we are the watchdogs of the society, it is our responsibility to bring to light where we feel there are lapses, so we could put a balance between the people and the government. Now, what I'm trying to say is the fact that, just like you said, we're seeing that NLC is saying, be ready to pay 100,000 minimum wage. How much are we generating as a country? Where is the revenue we have as a country? We're seeing, even coming from aviation, we've seen what the aviation are saying. We saw there was a protest at the, you know, at the airport where we saw the union saying some of the things, the agreement is not being met. A lot of things are actually around that. And if you go deep down, you realize this is not a problem that just started a year or two. This is a problem that have been there for long. Administration come, administration go, and nothing is being done about all of this. So just like we're saying, if you're ready to pay 100,000 minimum, which, you know, Nigeria does not have this money. We're spending 96% of whatever revenue we have to pay our debt. We have a lot of debt. We've seen China refuse even giving Nigerian government what they needed. So we have to look for either individuals or other banks or however, just to get some money which will be able to run things in the country. So what I'm trying to say is that it's high time for the government to sit down and face reality. If we say we want to remove the fuel subsidy, are our refineries working? Every now and then we check, we see Ajaokuta still mining, we see textile industry complaining that as simple as even stock fish and pomo, we import it. Fish, we import it. And I begin to ask exactly what is the problem. What happened to the fishes in our river? What happened to us tying our own fabric, our own Ankara down here? What happened to us using all of these things? So you begin to ask that we are more like we are poor, but we want to act like we are rich, actually consuming what we do not even have. Somebody will prefer to borrow just to be able to live the standard of living he wants to. So I think this all boils down to us being transparent and being honest to ourselves to say, do we really have what it takes to do what we want? Yes, we know that somebody somewhere is actually benefiting from this first subsidy, but we're not going to rule out the fact that it will at least help the common man to be able to afford. We saw in the paper, inflation is not just in Nigeria, Rachel, it's globally. Are we looking at food prices? You can go to the market today after pricing just a measure of rice. We saw local rice is at a high, the price right now. Very few people can even afford to eat rice in their homes right now. So there are a lot of things that we really need to sit down as a country. The government needs to sit down. No wonder we've seen expertise, we've seen economists, we've seen so many people coming out to tell the incoming president, that's the president-elect, to really sit down and look at things. We've heard people even saying that it would take more than 7 years to fix Nigeria to the way it was 7 years back. So Rachel, imagine how was Nigeria 7 years back when Nigerians were complaining of the level of living, the standard of living. So there are a lot of conversation that we need to put them on the table as a country and sit down and say, what can we now do? Yes, the borders were closed, no rice is coming in. But yeah, we've seen that foreign rice, back into the market. How did they get there? So these are questions that everybody needs to be on his tool, to be running up and about, because it's not all about leaving this responsibility to a particular person or to a particular agency. Everybody starts with that responsibility. So just like the NLC say, I know we cannot afford 100,000 minimum wage, but we have to sit and say, what is the way forward henceforth? Rather than spending 96% of our revenue paying debt, we need to look at how we can invest it into the country, how we can make security number one priority, because if the country is secure, we have investors coming and then we generate money from that. We'll be able to even have farmers going back to the farm. Agriculture is there. We have recession coming in. I think we had recession in Nigeria about twice or so, and therefore every of those times agriculture was what made us out. How comes oil could not do that? So we need to sit down as a country and really think hard. What can we do to actually make Nigeria a better place for everybody at the end of the day?
Of course, and I just keep hoping that the federal government are sitting down and really thinking of a way of really reducing the hardship of citizens if they eventually go through with the removal of the subsidy and say, you know what, this is the way forward, and regardless of all the things that may come upon Nigerians, this is necessary, then they should also come up with a plan that will reduce the hardship of Nigerians, because we don't know how long it's going to be that this subsidy removal is going to affect the price of fuel. We don't know how long it's going to take before there is a stabilization in the price of fuel. And I know of the $800 million as palliative, I think we need to see a breakdown exactly how the Ministry of Finance plans to disburse this fund to help Nigerians. It shouldn't be a once in a while kind of money. If you're putting the less privileged Nigerians on palliative for fuel subsidy removal, then it should be a monthly thing, not just a random selection of once in a year. People go to work every single day, and we have 365 5 days in a year, and people barely rest for 30 days in a whole year. So when you are giving this help out, make it consistent in a way that truly it can reduce the help and it can reduce the burden or the hardship on Nigerians.
Of course, Rachel.
Still on the Guardian newspaper, court strikes out EFCC's suit against Kogi Governor Yahaya Bello over assets for future. The details can be found on page 7. I'm encumbered by scandals. Atiku replies Tinubu's serial loser jab. The details can be found on page 6. Nigeria has highest number of collapsed buildings in Africa, says Son Gigi. Death, delay, frustration on Lagos-Ibadan endless road repair. We have Oando takes delivery of Nigeria's first mass transit electric bus. The details can be found on page 18. At the downside of the paper, uncertainty trails emergence of new Alafin. The details can be found inside the paper on page 7, and that's all the news on the Guardian newspaper.
Right, before we move further with the newspaper review, we'd like to take a time out at this moment so we can open the phone lines for our callers to call in. We said a lot this morning about $1.2 million being spent to bring back, Nigerians that are stranded in Sudan. We've also seen that there was a closed-door meeting with the president-elect on the issue of zoning, and then how the 10th House of Assembly will be. A lot of stories are actually on the papers this morning. So when we come back from the break, we'll open the phone line so you can air your view on any story that's of interest to you. Please do not go, and we'll be right back. Thanks for staying tuned. It's still the Dailies on Echo Television International. We've been keeping you up to date with what's happening in our papers. Before we went on the break, we're telling some of the stories that have been making the head on the rounds on most of our papers. We've seen about $1.2 million being spent for 40 buses that will be used to evacuate Nigerians to the border so they can be airlifted back to the country. We've also heard that NLC have told the federal government to be prepared to pay 100,000 naira minimum wage if they will remove the fuel subsidy. These and many other stories are what we have seen on the paper. So at this moment, our phone numbers are open. They are displayed on your screen. You can actually call us, air your view on any story that you think is of interest to you. Please do remember to be civil with your language and also to turn down the volume of your TV set when you call us or you move away so we can hear you clearly here in the studio. I'm still joined by Rachel Tanzi. Thank you so much.
Welcome, Sally.
All right, let's take a look at the Daily Independent newspaper. Consensual World Bank facility is positive for Nigeria, coming from the DMO. And on asset forfeiture, court strikes out EFCC suit against Governor Yahaya Bello. The big story on Sudan crisis. Federal government hires 40 buses at $1.2 million to move Nigerians to Egypt, with the rider at last begins evacuation of stranded citizens. Says no Nigerian has died in war-ravaged Sudan. You can find detail of that story inside the paper. Other stories still here. We have appeal court relocates Ebonyi election petition tribunal to Abuja. You can find that on page 29. And we have herdsmen kill two soldiers.
I think we have a caller on the line.
I'm calling from Guarandok, Abasha.
Hello,
Okay,
good morning.
good morning, Andrew from Guarandok. Hello, Andrew. Okay, I think we lost that caller.
All right, I think we lost that call. We hope you called us back again.
Yes.
Still on Daily Independent, we've heard that herdsmen killed 2 soldiers, 15 villagers in Benue community. You can find that on page 29. Federal government must review of human rights policy as administration winds down. You can find that on page 7. And we have Lagos begin removal of illegal structures on Banana Island.
Caller.
We have the call. Good morning.
Morning.
Please go on. I think we lost that caller because
We hope you
can't-
call us back again.
Yes.
All right, still on Daily Independent, federal government hands over second Niger bridge May 15. And we have, unlike Tinubu, I have no drug case, dual citizenship scandal coming from Atiku. And downside of the paper, we have Adamawa Gubar, APC, Binani withdraw suit against INEC and Fitiri. You can find that on page 6. And that's all on Daily Independent.
On Daily Sun newspaper, appeal court orders relocation of Ebonyi election. We have
I
a
think
caller.
we have another call. Hello, good morning.
Yes. Okay. Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
We're fine. Please go on with your contribution.
On a routine that every day the Nigerian dailies will carry the insecurity, particularly in Benue, Plateau, and Kaduna State. Are you with me?
We can hear you, sir. Go on.
Are you with me?
Yes, please go on.
Are we together? Okay. The question is, what is so special about Benue, Plateau, and Kaduna that the federal government cannot stop it? Nigerians want to know. What is so unique? Does it mean this government are stronger than the federal government, or the federal government is not working to curtail this insecurity in these states? What is really happening?
Thank you very much, sir, for that.
That's the question.
All right.
Thank
He's
you.
asking a question that why is it Benue, Kaduna, and then
I asked
Plateau?
the same question,
And then the
Rachel.
question for him was that the federal government trying to tell us that these gunmen are above them, that they have not been able to solve this situation in this state. Because, Sela, I think that's the message we're getting. As difficult as it might be for us to agree, but I keep saying that the government of Nigeria have resources at its disposal, that no matter how passionate I am about wanting to change Nigeria, I don't have such resources at my disposal. The federal government have everything it takes to solve some of these problems, but for some reason it keeps lingering. We have a call on the line.
Call. Hello, good morning.
All right, I want to say something there. Good morning, my people over there in 1970.
Good morning.
Yeah, I want to say something about that 1.2 million naira Nigerians and to evacuate other Nigerians from back them from Sudan. I hear that my sister over there said the money is too much. Nigerians are looking for money because of our economy of today. My sister, the money is not too much. Because if you compare that money with the life of people, you will know that the life of people is more than that money. And besides that, the money Nigerians spend at the election, this election that we still have a problem today from INEC, it's more than that. Then, if someone tells me that that money is too much, I will ask you. And let me also say something. What happened with INEC to bring this election, transparent election, the way they promised us in Nigeria that the election of this year will be transparent election? Because if anything happens in this country, we're going to blame INEC. Whether you like it or not, whether the Nigerians like it or not, whether the tribunal wants to say the truth or not, if anything happens in this country, we have to blame INEC. Because it is the one that promised us that every election that we're going to put this year will be transparent election. Now, what stops that transparent not to be fulfilled? So really, Nigerians, we are not a stupid. For everybody Nigerian here with the senses, record all what we are saying. Just like when Tinubu come to Kwara State here to do his own campaign, he said, this is my turn. I don't know what the idea do for the plaza, so they come hearing that this turn belongs to him. Well, there's a skeleton in his cupboard. When someone wants to refuse a Nigerian to know that there's a skeleton inside the cupboard. You know, so let us come and tell us what happened to become his own turn. Or whether Nigerian put him or Nigeria doesn't put him, he will still become president and he comes to pass. So let everybody be under prayer. Say, God, protect us in this country. Whatever is hidden, let me review so that we can be in peace in this country. Thank you, my people.
Yeah,
thank you for understanding. God bless Nigeria. God bless the
Thank you. Still on the Daily Sun.
Yeah, let's go on with the Daily Sun.
Yes, Celia. And on the Daily Sun newspaper, April 30th, May 15 delivery dates for Lagos-Ibadan Road, Second Niger Bridge. This is coming from the federal government. You can find the details on page 8. We have appeal court ordered relocation of Ibenye election petition tribunal to Abuja. The big story, we have a caller on the line. Okay,
hello, good morning.
Yeah, mine is just a question.
Right.
Like the issue of this killing in Benue, Plateau, and Kaduna. The federal government, are they not buoyant enough to do so?
We didn't get your question, sir. Can you come again? Okay, I think we lost that caller, but he
Hope
said
you
he
call
had
back
a
and ask
question.
a
Yeah,
question.
we hope you call back and ask your question. The big story on Daily Sun newspaper, federal government evacuates Nigerians from war-torn Sudan, says no life lost. Spends $1.2 million to hire buses, instructs diplomats to remain on ground to oversee exercise. The details can be found on page 29. Tinubu Kalu hold meeting in Abuja. I remain best candidate for Senate president, says Chief Whip, and the details can be found on page 28. Asal Seaport, how Southeast lost $600 million deal with China by importers. Nigeria's domestic transaction hit 980 billion naira in 3 months. The details can be found on page 2. Asset forfeiture, Governor Bello floors EFCC as court strikes out suit. 8 bandits killed, many injured in factional clash over cattle in Niger. Gunmen attack Abuja village, kill 6 in Plateau. Still on presidential poll, again Atiku, Obi attack INEC and Tinubu. The details can be found on page 4. At the downside of the paper, Atiku pays Kalu condolence visit over wife's death. You can find the details more on page 28. We can see a picture story where we can see the visit from Atiku and also that of Tinubu to Kalu. And that's all the news on Daily Sun newspaper.
On the Nation newspaper, we have Nigerian air will fly before May 29, Minister insists. You can find that story on page 2. And on Lagos, government Ondo partner in electric bus delivery. Headers inflow into Ondo forest worries Amoteku. Lagos begins demolition of building on Banana Island. You can find those story on page 3. And then we have the big story, Tinubu APC target consensus Senate President and Speaker with the rider Rooney party favors Christian to lead the Red Chamber. You can find more detail of that on the front page and inside the paper. And on election petition, Atiku Obi attack President, PDP Labour Party candidates reply Tinubu. 500 Nigerians evacuated to Egypt in 10 buses. 13 stranded students allowed into Ethiopia. Fighting continues despite 42 hours ceasefire. Downside we have coming from Wike, Tinubu to inaugurate projects in Rivers May 3rd. And we also have Binani withdrawal suit, which you can find on page 2. We have the picture story where we can see the Lagos State Governor, the President-elect Governor Autumn, and many others in a picture together. So you can do well to read more detail of what that meeting was all about. And that's all on the Nation newspaper.
On Leadership newspaper, no Nigerian has died in Sudan conflict. Lagos begins removal of illegal structures on Banana Island. We have trending Nigerians angry over hike in DSTV Go TV subscription rates. Price of cooking gas increased by 22.0%. You can find more details on page 2. Subsidy removal. CSOs kick against $100 million World Bank loan. Gunmen killed 2 soldiers, 15 civilians kidnapped, 29 in Benue and Abuja. The details can be found on page 7. The big story, National Assembly, Tinubu APC leaders meet to decide on zoning. House caucus presents. We have a caller on the line.
Hello, good morning.
Over there in Plateau State.
We are doing well, sir. Good morning.
Good morning, how are you, sir? I just want to contribute to the issue of these bandits that are killing our people in the northern side. I begin to wonder, is this all these general, lieutenant colonel, captain, are they saying they don't have enough intelligence, they don't have much equipment to tackle people that carry guns when they carry armor tanks? They have armor tanks, or they are using the conflict to make money. These people don't have missiles. Nigeria has missiles. We have what's it called? All this war equipment. Everything we have it. So they are just playing politics. Military, Nigerian military people. Do you know how many Nigerian military men we have in Nigeria? Only Plateau, only Benue. How many battles do we have in Benue State? Are they up to 300? Only 8 people we carry down and kill 300 people, 400 people, 45 people, 30 people. I'm so happy to hear this. I stay in Lagos. And I only pity people in the northern side. people in Benue, people in when I heard you say, I felt bad. I felt bad. And all of them will come and they say, let's talk about the Kidiko, retire Kidiko, captain Kidiko. What captain are they? What are they captaining? Who are they captaining? We live peacefully in Lagos. Only 10 or 15 people will be killing like 200 people. Well, God bless Nigeria. God bless you people over there.
Thank you very much. These are all burning questions that every Nigerian wants answers to. It's just still on the attacks and saying that the federal government has more ammunition than these people and what it takes to combat this
insurgency. We have more
insurgency.
ammunition, Richard.
Yes.
It's just surprising that they have more sophisticated
But that was in the
weapons than
case
we
of the
do.
Boko Haram at Sambisa Forest. What about these Fulani herdsmen? And the villagers have clearly said how these attacks are happening. What's giving them an edge over these villages is the fact that these villagers have nothing to protect themselves. But still yet, Sele, we have still sophisticated weapons enough. He's talking about the generals we have, the colonels we have. Are they trying to tell us that they don't have intelligence enough to be able to fish out these people from wherever they are? We have it, Sele, but for some reason we keep saying people are sleeping on their jobs, and we have to admit to that truth in Nigeria. We have a caller on the line.
Hello, good morning. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, actually, the issue of this killing in Benue, Plateau, and Kaduna, everything, getting out of hand like seriously. More especially like the one in Benue. Killing, you hear that, yes, some heads up to 5, 6 will invade the community and kill no less than 30, 40, 50 people. And the federal government, they are there watching, listening, reading the news, that they cannot even declare those people terrorists. Planning with arms, they are terrorists. So I believe federal government should wake up, build up its strong security architecture. Then what was it? If those people continue killing our brothers and sisters from the border side, they will be in trouble. And hardship will continue like that. So I'm appealing to the federal government to come up with relevant and meaningful thoughts towards the issue of this Fulani headmen of a thing. Because then they are not above the law. If I may even ask, who are those people giving those Fulani arms to go and start terrorizing? Why we have Major General, Captain, Lieutenant, and so on and so forth. We have prominent men. So people should keep the program up so that federal government will come to our aid. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Still on the leadership newspaper, we have states get 48-hour ultimatum to remit 2023 Hajj fare. Court dismisses for future order on Kogi governor's assets. And on Adamawa, Paul Binani drops suit against Fin3, INEC, and others. And you can find the details on page 6. The big story on the leadership newspaper, Tinubu APC leaders meet to decide on zoning. The writer following that, House Caucus presents zoning template. Oji Kalu, we have a caller online.
I think this will be the last call we'll take for today. Good morning.
Good morning again, the studio. From Buhari here in Abuja. I want to talk on this security, particularly the unending killings in Benue, Southern Kaduna, Plateau, and Taraba, and in fact the middle part of this country. Before then, we normally have the favor of the president condemning, or he tells us that he's in shock. But now there is nothing is being said about the daily killing
What the political class are interested in now is how to share the government positions, who is the Senate President, who is this, who is that. While helpless Nigerians are dying every day. Question Nigerians like me would like to ask, do we still have governance? Do we have any person? Can we imagine that these people being killed every day are children, are families of these people who are in a top political position? You can imagine how the issue would have been tackled immediately. How do we get help as an ordinary person from this country? What is it in this particular area of Benin and this thing that the people have to be suffering every day? Some few years before now, I mean, around 2016, 2017, 2018, there are insinuations that Haram has disguised in the form of herdsmen because of the federal government disposition towards the herdsmen.
Thank you very much for that contribution. I think we lost that caller. Yes, and for the big story on the Leadership newspaper, you can find the details on page 4. We have a picture story where we can see the Attorney General of the Federation and others, and that's all the news on Leadership newspaper.
All right, thank you so much, Rachel. That's how far we can go. Thank you to all our callers. Thank you to the crew members, the general manager, Eco Executive. Thank you to our supporters and everyone that made sure that this program was a success. Until we come your way again, to have a blessed day ahead.